Hello everyone, let's begin with creating our project. I'm going to use create React app, and I'm also going to give the template as TypeScript. I already run this, so run this. I have the project ready open here. Let's clean this a bit. Our project is ready. In this video we are going to see about the React hook called useState. So before jumping into it, let's see why would we want, like in a traditional sense, how would we have a state, some variable, something inside this component. In a very naive way we can do this. Let a equal to 0 and let's have a button here. A value is a. Oops, now let's have a div which says the value here and a button. We have the button here. So on clicking the button we are going to have a function which just increments the a. Maybe let's keep it as a separate function, inc a, which increments the a and also logs that a value changed. And let's pass this function. And one mistake is that when we pass a function, this on click, it is expecting a function which returns nothing. The beginner mistake is that when we pass, we may just do this, and as we are using TypeScript, it immediately says that type void is not accessible to the type. This is the type, which is a function, mouse event. So we have to just pass the function here. So on clicking, as you can see, the a value is changing, the let is changing, but it's not affecting the DOM. Now this is a problem. Why would we need a data-driven DOM manipulation? Think about it. In an imperative way, in a traditional way, using a vanilla JavaScript, we get this data maybe from an API or something, and then we will traverse a DOM using combination of selectors. We will find the elements. For example, this maybe we can have this as ID. Maybe can a value. We will find this div with using the ID or something or any selector, and we will just update this div in an imperative programming way. But React solves that problem. We can just hook this value inside DOM element, and we can just play around with the data, and the DOM will automatically be updated. So it abstracts a lot of complexities and work from us. So let's list the problem we are going to solve. The first problem is we figured out that this variable a is nothing special. This is just a JavaScript variable. React has no means to know that. React needs to listen to the changes happening. We are changing this element, right? This variable. React has no means to know that it has to listen to the changes happening to this variable so that it can update the DOM element. There is no link, there is no synchronization going on between this data and then this DOM. So that's the first requirements. We need let's call it in a layman's term called special variable, which triggers the re-render of component. So that's the first problem we are going to solve with the useState hook, which is going to be, we are calling this a special variable, which is going to work like this variable, but whenever we change the variable, that's going to directly update the DOM. That's going to trigger a re-render. So we will be seeing the changes happening here. And also one more problem the useState hook solves is that, think about it, this is a function. The a is just a local variable. When we call this function, we initialize this as 0, and whatever we do, and we render it again. And when we call this function again for re-rendering, it's going to come inside and it's going to reinitiate this value to again 0. So this value is not persistent. So second problem we are going to solve with useState is we need the special variable that persists among re-renders. First requirement, whenever we change the variable, we want this component to be re-rendered. Second requirement, whenever we change, the value should be persistent. If we leave the previous re-render, if we have the a to be 15, when we again call this app, it should start from 15. It shouldn't reinitiate. Let's have the hook here. So we are using this useState. Let's import that. And the initial state, let's call it 0. For the state, I'm going to give that as b. So this is the syntax. The useState it will give an array. We are just destructuring it. The array it returns a stateful value and a function to update it. That's the documentation says it. So the stateful value is what we called in a layman's term we call it a special variable, which does these two things: persists the value and also re-renders the component. So let's do it. So this is a variable. As you can see, it's just a number. When I hover over it, it says let a equal to number. When I hover over it, it says b equal to a number. So, and then this set b is a function which we will use to update this value. Let's create a function. Let's call that thing b. So whenever we do, we are going to set b. Instead of just incrementing that like this, we are going to set b, and we are going to get the b. We can actually do this. This will also set, but a more reliable way is to actually get the value and increment that. That's much more a reliable way. And also I'm going to console log this. So we have the special variable here along with a function which updates a variable, and also it prints a console log. So let's see. Let's also have some titles here. So when we click the A, it changes. When I click B, as you can see, the number is changing. Also, we are printing it. So that's the difference. That we have solved one problem. So just we're using this syntax, we are able to now, you think about it, it's like a live data. This b is like a living, breathing variable, which whenever it changes, we are not even finding this. Okay, I have two IDs. Even this works without any IDs. This b is an alive variable, which whenever we just deal with data, we can get this data from an API and we can modify the data however we want. And this is like a subscription going on here. Imagine we get an array here, we process that array, and we save a particular, maybe it's just an array.length. We got 17 variables, 17 list items, and here we can print length of array. Here we have imagine we having a component which prints the number of elements we got from the API. We can just assign a variable like a b, right? In this b we can assign like the array dot length, and automatically this component, this imaginary component, will update. Just how this component is working, right? We are not even trying to find this DOM element and inputting the value. It is just automatically working. So this is the problem useState solves. And also let's dig deeper. I want, for example, in a scenario, I do not want to trigger the re-render, because the re-render is, however React tries to optimize the process, the re-render is going to take some load. To imagine when we have some heavy children going having here, whenever the b is going to change for a very very basic action, when we have a complex set of children components, child components, it's going to, everything is going to re-render unless we are going to use some techniques like memoization. It's going to be a costly process. So the third requirement is, what if we want a persistent data and I don't want to okay, let me type that requirement. I want a persistent variable and I do not want to trigger the re-render. That's a valid requirement, right? And we have also seen that this, and also I want to show one more thing, that I want to prove that this a is not persistent. Let me also print a here. So I press it a couple of times, 9 times. The a value is 9, and I am pressing. When I start pressing it, the a value nullifies. That's because when we re-render this component, as I said, it comes from here. Let me have a log here. That's the beginning. And also, okay, 1 minute. Let me just use an use effect. I know we haven't seen this yet, but bear with me. Don't mind about this syntax. Just I'm going to have a console log. We will look at this use effect in a separate video in a much deeper way. Right now, I have to understand that this use effect runs on every render. So let's see. So let's start by clicking the A several times. The A's value is 7, and I'm clicking. So this is what we have inside the use effect. A value A, B value B. As you can see, when I clicked B once, the A value is reset. It's not persistent. When I click several times, so this dash is the first thing happening whenever the re-render happens. So that shows that it starts, the control flow starts from here and it reassigns A to 0. So it's not persistent. So a naive way to do is, maybe we can have something here. So this goes out of this function, the context of this function. So whenever this re-renders, the C is not going to be affected, right? Let's see. I'm having another function here, and also I'm going to have another set of this outer context, and I'm going to increment C. When I press C value, the C and A are basically the same stuff, but the context changes. C value updates, A value updates, and you can see that there is no re-render happening because we are not seeing this console.log. And when I click this B, as you can see, the A value is reset to 0, the B value is incrementing on every click, but the C value stays. So this may look like we have solved this third requirement, that the requirement was like, I want a persistent variable and I don't want to trigger the re-render. So we are able to actually use this value, we are changing this to 14, and when it re-renders, the C retains the value, it persists the value. But it's very apparent that it's a very ugly hack. This is not inside the function, we are having something outside, and things can break, things can get ugly. So how to solve this? We are going to introduce another hook called useRef. The useRef we will see in detail in the upcoming videos. Right now we are going to use useRef to achieve this one particular requirement. That is, I want a similar value which persists among the re-renders, but also it won't trigger any re-render. D is equal to useRef. I'm going to pass a 0 here, and let's have a function. Let's copy paste this, and we initiate this D variable as 0. So we can access this by using d.current. That's where the variable stays. The useRef is typically used for pointing to a particular DOM element here. So for example, if we are doing an uncontrolled form, we can assign a ref, we can create a ref and assign a ref, and we can get the value from that using that ref, and we can process whatever we want. We will look in deep about useRef. Right now we are just using that to store a value which is a number. Okay, so we have to use, as I said, the value lies inside the current. Okay, I also need the D value here. So we have all these values at 0. I'm pressing A few times, C a few times, I'm pressing D a few times, and as you can see, the value increments slowly. Now the B is the actual the special variable, right? As the documentation says, it is the stateful variable, say stateful value, which persists the data and also triggers a re-render. So let me click the B, and what happens is that the C retains the value, the D retains the value, the A doesn't retain the value. So these are the techniques which we want to know when we need to. Actually, this A and C, forget about it. These are just to show the use of these two React hooks. The takeaway is that when you want a state which needs to be persisted between the re-renders, and also trigger the re-render of this component, use useState. At the same time, when you want a persistent value data inside the component, but you don't want that to re-render the component, use useRef. So I think we are good here. Let's see in the next session. Thank you.